It has happened. The annexation of 4 Ukrainian territories is now complete. A few hours back, the Russian President Vladimir Putin made it official. He gave a speech. He dared the West and set the terms of engagement with Ukraine. The international community has unanimously rejected these referendums. They have been called a sham. Even the UN doesn't back them. But the condemnation has had little, or we would say no, impact on Russia. Ukraine is now making swift moves. A short while back, it applied for a NATO membership. Kiev says it is applying to join the military alliance through an expedited procedure. My question is, how will Vladimir Putin react to this? What does he plan to do next? After Crimea, will Putin get away with this move too? And this is our cover story tonight. Let's get you updated with what's happened in the last few hours. The world's attention was on Moscow today. The Kremlin hosted a grand ceremony where Vladimir Putin announced the annexation. Russia is now taking control of 4 regions: Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. These represent 15% of Ukraine. And today, Vladimir Putin annexed those very regions. He signed the decrees in the presence of the so-called leaders of these 4 regions. Remember, they were installed by Russia. Listen in now to what Putin said.
Today we signed the treaties on the admission of the Donetsk and Luhansk republics of the Zaporizhia region and Kherson regions into Russia. People in these regions are becoming our citizens forever.
So that's what Vladimir Putin had to say about the annexation. From there on, Putin launched in what could best be described as a rant. He listed his grievances against every rival you can think of, starting, of course, with Ukraine. Putin tried to paint Kiev as the aggressor. He claimed that Ukraine began this war back in 2014. That year is crucial, and now they must return to the negotiating table. But it will be Putin who wants to set the terms of the truce. His first condition is about the annexed territories. The Russian president said they are non-negotiable.
We call on the Kiev regime to cease firing and stop all military activities immediately, including the war it launched in 2014, and to come back to the negotiating table. We are ready to do this, as has been said on many occasions. But the choice of the people in Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson areas is not up for discussion. It has been made.
And next on Putin's list was the West. The Russian president launched an aggressive attack. He left no issue untouched. Putin called the West colonizers. He said that Western powers were trying to break up Russia. And then, of course, he talked about Europe. The Russian president brought up the region's energy crisis. He said Russia was not responsible for the shortages. Instead, it is the policies of European leaders that have created the chaos. All in all, Putin tried to convey this message that he was on the right side of history and that the West is responsible for everything that is going on.
They do not wish us freedom. They want to see us as a colony. They don't want equal cooperation with us, but robbery. They don't want to see us as a free society, but as a crowd of soulless slaves.
So that was a quick recap of Putin's speech. What was Ukraine's response? It is now considering countermeasures. Before we came on air today, the presidential office in Kiev put out a statement. Ukraine plans to reach out to the international community. It is looking for support in multiple areas. I have the list with me now. Let me tell you. Here is what Ukraine wants: more military support, more sanctions on Russia, security guarantees, nuclear deterrence against Russia, and help to counter Russian hybrid warfare threats. We have already told you about Ukraine's NATO application. So we can expect a military response from Kiev. Volodymyr Zelensky spoke about an hour back. He has refused to speak to Vladimir Putin. Instead, Zelensky says he's ready for talks with Russia, but listen to this, with a different president.
President Putin does not know what dignity and honesty are. Therefore, we are ready for a dialogue with Russia, but with another president of Russia.
And now let's tell you what will happen next. Where is all this headed? A rally is scheduled to take place in Moscow's Red Square. It will be a celebration of sorts. We saw some of those visuals earlier. Something similar had happened when Russia took control of Crimea back in 2014. In the coming days, Russia will make more moves to formalize this so-called annexation. It will involve Russia's constitutional court. It will approve the annexations, and then the action will shift to the Russian parliament. The State Duma will pass specific amendments that will talk about increasing the size of the Russian Federation. And once that is done, the papers will travel to Vladimir Putin himself. He will sign them, of course, and make the annexation official. I come back to the original question. What about the war? Where is it headed? What will be the consequences of this annexation? Will it intensify the war, or will Vladimir Putin's invasion remain a frozen conflict? Let's try now and understand the situation through a map. Take a look at the screens now. This is what the annexation means for Putin. From the east to the south, it creates a buffer zone of sorts. Crimea was already in Russian control, and now Russia wants to strengthen its hand in the east. In the coming days, Russia is expected to send more troops to these particular regions. Putin has already promised to work on security. In fact, some experts suspect that the people living in these areas could be encouraged to join the Russian military. Next question. How will the West respond to Russian actions? Reactions have already started pouring in. Let's begin with the United States. The US was among the first countries to respond. America is hitting Russia with fresh sanctions. More than 1,000 people and firms connected to the war in Ukraine have now been sanctioned. In addition to that, more than 900 Russians will now be subjected to visa restrictions. America's move was on expected lines, of course. US President Joe Biden has already revealed his intentions. Take a look.
I want to be very clear about this. The United States will never recognize Russia's claims on Ukraine's sovereign territory. This so-called referenda was a sham, an absolute sham.
Biden has the support of not just his allies, but the United Nations too. Secretary General Antonio Guterres has refused to accept the referendum results. Listen in.
The so-called referenda in the occupied regions were conducted during active armed conflict in areas under Russian occupation and outside Ukraine's legal and constitutional framework. They cannot be called a genuine expression of the popular will.
The list goes on. The European Union is gearing up to punish Russia too. More sanctions could be in the pipeline, and in this round, the Russian citizens could feel the pinch. Already there is talk of making visa assessments for Russians stricter in nature.
That we have a lot of Russian citizens that are now leaving Russia because of the mobilization. If a person, a Russian citizen, intends to stay longer than 90 days in the EU, he or she should not be issued a visa. We call on member states to very thoroughly investigate whether there is a risk of a person that will be issued a short-term visa that will not leave back to Russia in time of the 90 days where the visa is valid to.
The Western reaction, of course, will be fierce, that's for sure. But can it change Vladimir Putin's mind? That's what everybody wants to know at this point in the war. The annexation of Crimea had little impact on the Russian state. Yes, Russia was diplomatically isolated, but it didn't deter Moscow from launching an invasion. And now by annexing 4 more territories, Putin has made quite a risky gamble today. The West now faces its ultimate test. We will, of course, continue to track the developments. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.